What is the cry for help trauma response, and how can that particular trauma response interfere with your ability to recognize your choices and options when trying to recover from family scapegoating abuse? That's what I'll be talking about in today's episode of Beyond Family Scapegoating Abuse, so stick around. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Rebecca Mandeville, psychotherapist and family systems expert. I'm also the author of Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed, Help and Hope for Adults in the Family Scapegoat Role. And if you watched my video last week on toxic shame and scapegoating, I mentioned a trauma response that is considered to be a fifth trauma response that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. I first heard about this from Dr. Janina Fisher, and she calls this the cry for help trauma response. And this would go along with the other four that you're probably already familiar with: the fawn or submit response, the freeze response, the flight response, and the fight response. I wanted to spend a little time in this video talking about the cry for help response, because if we go into the cry for help response as our primary trauma response, we can find ourselves feeling very, very helpless and unable to get out of unhealthy situations, recognize choices that we may have. The world can become very small. You can have tunnel vision, and you're basically on some level looking for someone who can see your distress and respond to it and help you. And this is very understandable how this trauma response would come to be if you grew up in the scapegoat role in your family of origin. You may have been in a position where when you did need help, appropriate types of help that young children need or adolescents need, you may have been shamed for expressing vulnerability or being uncertain of something or not knowing something, and that could have contributed to your sense of helplessness. I'm asking for help. No one's helping me, even my own mother, father, sibling. That can be a very, very lonely and scary feeling. And that's why we call these trauma responses survival responses. If you can have some way of responding to your environment that, in your mind at least, you think is helping you to get by and get through and survive, it's no wonder then that the neural pathways are being conditioned around these trauma responses, and that our bodies are holding information, dictating in a way some of our behaviors. Well, as an adult, the middle part of your brain, where the amygdala is, our emotion center, it doesn't know if these triggers, when we get triggered, and our amygdala gets fired up, it doesn't know if the threat's happening here now. Is it real, or is it something in the past and it's not a genuine threat right now? That's why we can become so activated. You have to understand that that part of the brain is not connected up always to the front part of the brain where the thinking mind is, the neocortex. That's why in trauma work, we help clients to start to connect with their neocortex so they can determine, is this a here and now threat, or am I being triggered due to a past event? So what I find many people have in common who come to me who have that cry for help response, and they may have some of the other trauma responses as well, but if their primary one is the cry for help response, they may have gotten the message, including from romantic partners or friends, that they're needy or too needy. They're intense, too intense, that they are expecting too much in a relationship. They're too dependent. They act helpless. It can be frustrating for the other person. And you may have, number one, no idea you're coming off this way. And number two, you have no idea that actually you are experiencing the cry for help trauma response due to perceived threats in your environment. You know, it's quite something to, if you're someone who did not know about trauma responses and all the great information coming out now around complex trauma and these different forms of invisible psycho-emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, and what I call family scapegoating abuse, you might wake up one day and go, oh my gosh, my entire life was one big trauma response. Hey, I'm one of them. I'm right with you. If you had that experience, I remember when it happened to me, and I remember learning in grad school when I started to take my first few family systems classes and did my family genogram. That was another big, oh my goodness. Look at these patterns in our family, generation after generation after generation, just repeating itself. And these are these big aha moments that also can be horrifying, really. I have people come to me sometimes in their 80s and they're like, my entire life was a trauma response. I don't have much time left, but let's make the best of it. What can we do? So I get that. I get that if you are feeling grief, anger, confusion, wondering what your whole life's been about, you're not alone. Just know that. But we also want to acknowledge and even celebrate that you survived. You survived. And what I want for all of you is that you not just survive, but thrive. Probably an overused trope, but it's true. And also to be able to commend yourself and your nervous system for actually helping you survive what may have been a very threatening, unsafe environment in your family of origin. And that might have continued on into adulthood. And the scapegoating might have been carried on by siblings if a parent who scapegoated you became infirm or died. And all these things can be very shocking to one's nervous system, oh my gosh, the scapegoating is going to keep going on and on and on through my siblings. That's a big one. A lot of my clients have experienced, and research respondents on the FSA research I did for a good many number of years. So, it's small consolation, but you're not alone. This is how you survived, was through trauma responses. The cry for help response, however, can impede your ability to take the actions needed to be able to help yourself today. And what can happen, and I know because I've been there myself, so I'm not judging anybody here. You can feel so helpless and been unheard for so long. Your voice has been negated for so long. There's no value placed on your feelings, perceptions, insights, or if you get anything out, you're told you're too intense, or you're too needy, or you're this, or you're that. You may have collapsed, so to speak, and have now developed a way of being whereby you are truly desperate for help. One of the things I do with my clients who are seemingly stuck in the cry for help response is I will feel the anger really they need to be feeling for them. Not permanently, but just so they can see what a actual healthy response would be to being mistreated, maltreated, abused, manipulated, to show them that you can be angry and not lose control, and that you have justifiable anger, what I call righteous rage, about what's happening to you. And in a way, I model that. Truth is, I actually do feel really angry about the things that happen to my clients, because these things shouldn't be happening to anybody. And I'm talking severe abuses of different kinds that are provable. Some have ended up in court. These are not people just coming to me whining and telling tales and making things up for attention. Sorry, they pay too much for that. They're not going to waste their money making things up just to get attention. There's cheaper ways to do it. And so I will model and embody that healthy anger for a client if they are in the cry for help, trauma response, and feeling defeated, and that there's really nothing they can do, and there's no choices, and there's no options. They may not be visible to you right now, but there are. And I work with people, I've worked with quite a few people who have severe disabilities, chronic illnesses, sometimes for decades, have to live with a parent, at least at this time. And in every case, I've been able to work with that person and help them get out of any helpless posture they may be in. And indeed, there have been some solutions, some possibilities that have revealed themselves. And it takes quite a bit of courage to make these changes when there might not be guarantees, when you take those risks to maybe move out and trust that you'll be able to make it, and hopefully have a good plan that you do. That's something I do to help my clients be successful when they make these major changes. Because those of you who are in that situation, very difficult to recover from family scapegoating abuse or narcissistic abuse if you're living with the people that are committing the abuses. And if it's their home and they're paying for stuff, there's a real power differential there. And we know in our society and many other societies around the world, those with the power have the loudest voice. So the antidote, as I mentioned last week, to toxic shame, that antidote is the same antidote for the cry for help response, in my experience, in my practice with scapegoated adults. And that is being able to feel a sense of appropriate anger or righteous rage if you're being treated badly. And that can release energy and clear away some of the toxins, so to speak, from the toxic shame. And also, that anger is energy. You now have access to more energy in your body that you can utilize to help yourself. This would go for the freeze response, the fawn submit response. What I find is my clients who get stuck in these responses, once they recognize what is happening, the missing piece for a lot of these clients is anger. They can feel sadness, they can cry, they can feel depressed, they can feel all kinds of things, but they can't feel angry because they learned, usually in their family of origin, that they're not allowed to feel angry. Another person in the family might be able to feel angry, but they're not. They're not allowed to protest. They're not allowed to say no. They're not allowed to have boundaries. Anger helps us set boundaries. We need to know when we're being violated. And that anger, and this is, going back to our cave people days, it's the anger that gets that adrenaline going that can help you to defend yourself, to help you say no, help you have boundaries. run someone off who's trying to steal your bearskin rug that you worked hard to get for back in those cave people times. Anger is so underrated, in my opinion. Anger can move mountains. In the beginning, it might feel very, very messy. It might feel scary. I've sent clients they have those places now, at least I know in San Francisco, you can go and just safely, appropriately attired. You can break plates and glasses. Just throw this stuff and let it break. I've had clients go to kickboxing, boxing, running, getting that anger moving, getting it out of our body in safe ways. But I'm telling you, you need to be able to get in touch with that righteous rage and access that anger to help you get unstuck. Nothing is going to change if you are just dealing with trauma responses and trying to keep your head above water, keep yourself from drowning. And that is why I always recommend trauma-informed modalities, treatment modalities, and what works for one person might not work for another. It's trial and error. I have a lot of people ask me, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Will that work? Will this work? Hey, I asked, try it, see if it works for you. It doesn't necessarily even have to be officially trauma informed, but are you feeling that you're progressing? Do you feel that energy starting to move? Are you feeling more grounded? Are you feeling like you can assert yourself, that you have a right to take up room in this world? As I talk about the cry for help response, I think of this baby crow I've been hearing for days and days, and it can fly because I've seen it very tentatively. But that baby crow knows how to do a great cry for help, and the parents know how to find it. And that crow will probably survive because most don't. Many die within the first year. That crow knows how to get attention. Babies that cry in healthy families, they can get that attention. I think one of the most painful things with the cry for help response is for the scapegoated child. That cry for help response is not only being ignored, but you may be getting shamed for even showing your vulnerability. If you're feeling like you need to be rescued, look at your life and ask yourself, are you in a situation you need to be rescued from? You may really need to change your situation, but it's unlikely that anyone's going to be able to execute the rescue for you. There may be people who can help you and support you, but you will have to move through your fears, any fears you have around change, fears you may have around limiting contact with family members who mistreat you, fears you may have around going no contact or moving to a different area if you're being the victim of a smear campaign. You need to be able to get to a place where you take full responsibility for your life, your well-being, and eventually your happiness. Life's too short to experience meaningless suffering. And scapegoating abuse is for me, one of the peak definitions of meaningless suffering. It's suffering no one should have to experience. You may suffer from trying to help yourself, but hopefully there's some meaning in that. You may have to make some changes. You may have to leave some people. You may have to change jobs. You may have to go without and redo your budget for a time. But that's meaningful suffering, so to speak. Tolerating abuse is meaningless suffering. And if you can't leave your situation right now, at least have the intention to believe that you can and start looking for support. And if you can't afford the kind of support that you think you need, get into a forum such as Out of the Fog has a complex trauma forum. People understand invisible child abuse there, and start gathering resources. What are other people doing? Believe that you can be helped. and reach out for help. But in the end, ultimately, you are responsible for helping yourself. Part of healing is checking in with yourself, learning to recognize those trauma responses, and learning how to nurture yourself. And it can be as simple as playing some relaxing spa type music, lavender oil, a bath in Epsom salt and lavender, those kinds of things, like wrapping yourself up in a nice soft blanket. There are so many ways we can start to nurture ourselves and tend to our body and ask for support. It's okay to say to people, hey, I know my situation seems overwhelming. I know you can't solve it, but I need someone just to listen to me. I need someone who maybe can brainstorm with me. I need someone who can just be with me and be able to tolerate that I feel distress about this. And you deserve to have that support. And if people in your life don't want to offer you appropriate types of support, I know that can be painful, and it may be that you need to reconsider who you have surrounding you, because we all deserve love and care. But if you've been scapegoated, you may not know that. You may know it intellectually, but you may not know it emotionally. And that's how we can end up, as I say, go to what you know. We can end up going to what we know, what we experienced in our family, end up in highly unsatisfactory relationships and not understand how that happened, or even abusive relationships and not understand how that happened. It is because on that subconscious level, we go to what we know. Our family may feel distressing, but it's what we know. And in that regard, it can feel comfortable. The ego is comfortable with the known more than the unknown. And to help yourself, you may need to go into the unknown and do things you didn't think you were capable of doing, so that you can get out of whatever distressing situation you're in and start to recover and rebuild a life that is filled with connection and support, where you are heard and valued, and you can also be there for others. If you have never heard of the cry for help response and you resonated with something today and you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you take a quick second to hit the thumbs up, I'd appreciate it, because that tells YouTube to suggest my videos to people who may not know about my channel yet. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love it if you would. Check out the comments. We have some scintillating conversations going in them at times, and I do post on the community tab as well. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.